After the Wichita Museum, we're thinking of heading to the salt mine, and it's probably gonna take all day, so that's why we came on the third last day we were here, and we're gonna go see. And it's like we're 600 I think feet above where we're supposed to be going, and they have a bunch of museum stuff, like they have a Dorothy and a Superman costume, and maybe even more. So let's go check it out. Now we're gonna go head to the elevator, I think. So we're gonna go in. They have this area in here, and I think that's like for the elevator. So we're gonna go inside the elevator now, I think.
Start counting off. Go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Wow, this elevator is totally not claustrophobic.
Well, hello everyone. Let's get nice and cozy.
Now, one of the reasons that we take you down in the dark if we can is that until the mid-1950s, the miners always rode down in the dark. They go down in cages that hang under buckets at the production shaft, and until the mid-1950s, they wore an open flame carbide lamp on their heads. And so they didn't want to light those things with 8 to 10 other miners in the cage with them until they got underground.
And goodbye lights.
In the mine, our shaft, it's actually pulled down into the mine with a big fan. You're going to go to your left when you get off. There's going to be some people here to get you started, and then you'll be able to.
Okay, that's scary.
All right, remember, don't look at the video. Looking down. Looking down. I'm looking down.
Watch your step
That direction. There's Shane over there. He's going to get you started.
Here's the white line. There's plenty of space up here. Alrighty, folks. So, you guys are now in the Permian Sea room, 650 feet underground. Now, what's going to happen? This is an interactive and self-guided tour. So feel free to take your time and look around.
650 feet underground now. This is all salt right here. I think this black stuff is something else. So this is, hey guys, it's like mud under underground. See, it's like yeah. And they got oversized rock salt. This is pretty cool.
Read this because it says the mud that has hardened to the consistency
salt dust, but it feels like Play-Doh and it'll harden the sand. Check out these old mine carts. It almost looks like Mine Train, but Mine Train looks more cartoonish and more friendly. This thing is kind of beat up, so we're gonna go catch our train now. But I wonder if we're gonna get one of these things. Definitely not gonna have an engine like this one, so I'm gonna go see the other people. So we were sitting down. I get to sit in the front because I'm the only one person here. So I'm gonna go try it.
All right, can you hear me through the speakers on your car there? Okay, fantastic. My name's Keith. I'm going to be your guide. We're going out for about an hour here. The only light out there is going to be what's in your hand and what's on my helmet. Okay, so I would suggest you leave it on high and you just look around and see what you can find. Well, the big room you walked through after you got off of the hoist this morning is an example of what they call room and panel mining, the big 300-foot long walls with 50-foot opening. In the 1940s, they switched to a new method of mining called room and pillar mining. And that's what you're going to see in most of our tour. In this area, there are 40-foot pillars. There we're going to mostly 50-foot pillars. The openings to our left and right are called entries toward the mine face. The direction we're headed is called a crosscut. And when the crosscuts and entries meet up, they form the pillars on either side of us. And like I said, in this area, there are 40-foot pillars surrounded by a 50-foot roof. There's some variation of that once we get into the more of the tour, but a good part of those pillars out there are 50 feet. We often use coal mining terminologies down here because there's a lot of similarities. One thing that's not similar, the coal miners often worked in very tight spaces on their hands and knees, and they would call the floor the belly, the ceiling the back, and then the side, the ribs. And if you can see where my light's focused up there, you can see kind of indentions in the pillar. Each one of those is the result of a dynamite blast. We call those ribs, and that becomes a rib wall. They blast up to 5 times in a shift, up to 10 in a double shift. And in the direction they were looking towards or facing, we call the mine face. And that's the furthest point in the mine that the actual mining is going on. Now we'll get pretty close to where the actual current mine face is on this tour. We don't actually be able to see anything for luck. Well, it's Saturday, so we won't even hear anything. But we'll show you where it's at. We get back, there's a map in front of the gift shop that kind of maps out everything that we've been going through here. We have a fence up here to separate the safari area from the rest of the museum. And the curtain you see on there is a vinyl curtain called a Brattis curtain. There's over 160 miles of tunnels down here. And to control airflow, today we use something called a Brattis curtain, and that's what you're going to see here. Well, I'm going to put the mic down for a second. We're going to catch this Brattis curtain and pass it back. If you do the same, please. If you look at this rock, you can see a really red salt. The miners figured out pretty quickly that the farmers wouldn't buy that. When they blasted, if it didn't look like good quality, they just dumped it off the side there. Quantity is never an issue down here. Quality in their minds was at that point. Today our main product is road salt, so it absolutely makes no difference. Well, besides that pressure arch I mentioned helping hold the ceiling up, there are also substantial salt beams that help hold the ceiling up. There's one at 6 foot, one at 9, one at 13, and one at 17. Well, mostly in this part of the mine, they mine at that 9-foot level. And that's what you see above our heads. But if you follow my laser, you see it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. What we think happened here was they mined too far into that 9-foot salt beam. It couldn't support itself anymore and started doing something called a roof sag. Now, sags don't always come down, very seldom come down immediately. But miners know as soon as they see that salt layer starting to sag, they stay away from that area. In fact, if you look back here, you can see there's a sag still in the ceiling back here. You can see that kind of gap there. And so at some point that may come down. Again, this is mine in the 50s, so it's been up there a long time. And notice also the condition of those railroad ties. Look brand new. Again, they're 60 years old. But again, no weather down here. They'd used a railroad tie 4 times down here before they were forced to replace it. They'd spike it to the rail bed. The next time they used it, they rotated a quarter turn. By the time they did that 4 times, they'd have to, of course, replace it. Might notice the wiring too. That's this is always an electric mine, so that's the old wiring. If you see the red cords up, that's something we put in. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the tour. Okay, we're going to pass this over a second rail bed here. This is a lot more typical of what you're going to see in an abandoned rail bed in this mine. Again, we're in the 1950s mining panel. They mined with used the road for another 30 years, and so they recycled everything. Well, this rail bed's pretty much picked clean. And that was done by the miners, and they would have used this stuff in the next spot that they were going to be mining at. All right, another crystal pod. This one's pretty cool. Has a special name. Miners refer to this as the submarine room. You can kind of see that, the conning tower back there, maybe the propeller back here. Interesting thing is, had they blasted one more day here, one more time, they would have destroyed that. If you look at the salt here, look how really dark it is. But they took a while to decide not to go on. If you look up here in the corner, there are 3 dates up there. The first of each month, the mine foreman comes out and marks each face that they're working on. Well, that's March, April, and May of 1958. So it took them 3 months to make that decision. But we're sure glad that they didn't, because that's a really cool formation. If you talk to any miner that's worked in this mine in the last 40 years and told them you were in the submarine room today, they'd know exactly where you were talking about. In front of us is another interesting, as 2 muck piles. They blast in 2 different directions at the same time. To the right would have been an entry. Directly in front of us would have been a crosscut. And they blasted at the same time, which is pretty unusual. That last pile of salt was worth $12,000. This thing's probably worth 25 to 30, but again, no profitable way to get it out of here, so it's just going to sit here. All right, you may have noticed as we're going around, if you look to the left here, our phones, those are what's called our mine phone. That is hardwired to topside and to the hub, which is in our gift shop, and we can contact them easily. If somebody got hurt or injured, we could have EMTs down there in a very short period of time. 1958, National Geographic magazine came to the mine. It was taking all kinds of pictures. In fact, this corner was one of the pictures featured in the article. I've always kind of thought National Geographic was probably a pretty eco-friendly company. Well, those yellow wrappers I pointed out back there, that's a photographer's film canister stuff. He just left them on the ground. Yeah, and there's some cigarette packets up here. We consider all these things artifacts, so it's okay with us now because it gives us something to point out. And you see the cigarette packs to our right here. They smoked pretty extensively down here, I think, until probably the mid-70s when Mine Safety Organization got involved. Of course, there's no gases in the salt mine, so it didn't really hurt anything except itself.
That was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I got lots of salt, pretty good amount, and I love the tour guy. He was very funny and friendly, and he shared a lot of information with us, so I really liked that. Maybe like a marble or something.
Yeah, I know. It feels like glass.
I know.
Like,
it's like sticky glass. I know, but it's like in like
Yeah.
a rectangle. It's weird.
I feel like it's broken glass, but like molded.
Like just move your hand across here. It's like hardened.
It's like ice
I
and
know.
honey.
Yeah. It's like ice. Not honey. It's ice, but not. What is ice? Realize why they have all these movie props because they used to store the movies. See, look, they probably had the original Twister movie, like the first copy or the first model. Maybe they stored the doors down here, and they used to put them in here because there's no floods, nobody gets in, and probably the safest place to put movies in.